so good. Uh, tell you what, I am not feeling very well today. It's like interesting, just lethargic in a lot of ways, and just probably need some time to rest. It's probably what it is. So, if you've been working super hard at something and just rest, I'm like, the audio. Now the audio is not working on this. Oh, it's just a day. I'm having a day. Just breathe, Natalie. It's all good. So yesterday I was talking about, the kindness that we can have in this world. Hopefully the audio is good. If it's not, I apologize everybody for the terrible audio. It just goes in and out, and I don't know how to fix it particularly. So I apologize. Um, Perhaps it's the gain. I don't know what it could be. Anywho, so yesterday I was talking about the, what happened in terms of not being served or being denied food and being able to at least, say a prayer and love people anyway, regardless of what shows up. Not always the easiest thing to do. And good morning, Mel. In fact, we want to be the ones to lash back. And so in my class, in my course, my master's program, right, we started to talk about On Dialogue by David Bowen. And On Dialogue talks about the ability for us to be able to communicate in a way, right, that is meaningful and impactful. Now, I haven't read On Dialogue, and I'm going to read On Dialogue. I've watched a few individual videos about his book and read the foreword and also the introduction to the book itself. And literally, I think the concept here is just saying that we ourselves get so attached to the thoughts that we have and that they're ours, that they're real, and we can really do some damage, right, socially. We can do it mentally to our family. So I guess that would be socially, environmentally, economically. How? Because when we get attached to thoughts, we start to say, I'm right, you're wrong. And we start to point fingers as though, we hold the ultimate truth of something. And it's kind of funny because part of it was saying, well, if you're expressing your opinion, you're really asking someone to be obedient and believe your thought. And people say, well, no, that's not true. And I started to think about it in the context of, even this, right? Even what I'm saying. But anytime we speak, right, we're trying to get someone to buy into maybe an idea or to understand our point of view. And it's from these thoughts that arise. And these thoughts are not our thoughts, right? It's kind of like they've been recycled in some way. There's no new thought really when you think about it. And where do thoughts come from? And so it dives deeper into understanding the neutrality of thought. How do we neutralize the idea or the concept of a thought without having to ostracize or blame or shame people and make people right, wrong, good, or bad about a certain thing? Now, this is a kind of a difficult task because we can look at things and say, at the bigger picture, and say, well, what about, individuals who do this, and do you think that that's right? Do you think that that's wrong? What about the thoughts when they, are doing this or that? Well, the reality is the thought is there, right? But how did it derive? Where did it come from? And the thinker itself. So it's pretty intense, and I did put a video up on my Spirit and Coffee. Good morning. I don't know who's on here on Facebook. Say good morning if I don't see you. It's not showing me who's on here for whatever reason. But when we look at the video, it does it basically gives a good idea about what the book is about and how I like the guy's explanation. And and I liked his video because it kind of reminded me of me, where he reads and then sort of gives this idea of what's being said, right? His own understanding of what's being said, and I think he does a really good job. So communication is critical, and we know that. And sometimes the way that we communicate has an impact on the people and the environment around us. We think that, oh, okay, so because I'm in the in group, it's okay to make wrong the out group, or the group that's not in the good, or in the no, or in the whatever. And so we start to see that there's this disconnect, and individuals who will treat others like poop, okay? Based on what? Based on the fact that they think that they're correct, they're right, their way of doing things is correct, and that everybody else is wrong. This is fragmentation. This causes a lot of disease, dis-ease, right? It causes a lot of heartache, and a lot of broken hearts and individuals. And by broken, I mean that they don't understand that perhaps they're part of the whole, and it's because they've been made wrong for who they are or what they're up to. And so when we look at it and we say that, when we pick things apart, we say, well, it's fragmented, right? Like, we're going to isolate and we're going to start pointing fingers at this group or that group. We then start to feel like we don't want to be part of the out group. So being part of the out group is what? It's uncomfortable, right? Think about it from and they do this a lot with movies. Sorry, I keep fixing my hair. I'm like, what's going on? They do this a lot with movies, especially movies for like high school, or, they have a lot of these high school movies where, you have the kid who's the outcast, and they make fun of them, and they treat him like crap, and this seems to happen, at that age, where it's learned behavior that we're different than you. And if you're not part of the in crowd, well, then you're not important. And if you're not important, then I don't know what to tell you. And it ostracizes and fragments and says, I'm different than you. When the reality is, we're not all that different. We're really more similar than we are not alike. So when we start to communicate, we can find things in common. Why? Because we're human, right? We're human. And I think the human sickness is that idea, right, of fragmentation, of isolation, of separation that I continue to talk about. But when we really look at it, and we look at the dialogue and how do we communicate, understanding someone's point of view, allowing yourself to listen without having, it's almost from a place of neutrality, which is not an easy place to get to. Why? Because we get triggered by things. There's so many triggers within us, and our brains want to respond, right? We want to respond to everything rather than just listen in neutrality. Now, I've practiced listening from a space of neutrality as a coach, as a life coach, because I get to, because I'm working with individuals, and I don't get to insert my own opinions about what's going on with them. Now, sometimes it arises in you, right? You can't stop certain things from arising in you, but rather than go down the rabbit hole, and this is why meditation supports, go down the rabbit hole of that particular thought, right? What do? We ask ourselves to just observe it, make it aware, and then let it pass, and don't hold on to the thought. So again, what does this allow us to do? It allows us to have a dialogue with individuals. It allows us to open up our minds and our hearts and our space to receive and understand another person's point of view, where they're coming from. It allows for the communication to go, to be synergized. But here's the deal, and this is what I liked about there was another video that I watched about poems on dialogue, and literally the guy said that when he wrote this, he initially wrote it for individuals who had done deep, deep, deep work. In other words, they were in the work, they were journaling, listening, they were doing self-reflections, they were self-aware. And by self-aware, I mean that they were taking responsibility for the experiences that they were having in their life. And that particular, that needs to happen first. We can't, in other words, we can't just go and stay neutral and say we're going to have a dialogue with a person. No, because we're going to want to negotiate, we're going to want to argue, we're going to want to just be able to sit there, right, and be in an open space of listening, and then allowing yourself to go through the emotional experience, right? Allowing it to rise just above to see it, but not be attached to it. You become the observer of it rather than the actor upon it. So when you're acting upon a thought, right, or acting upon something in your mind, you become the actor of that. You basically embody it. It's like an archetype. You embody an archetype and you act upon that particular energy that's arose in you. But if we don't act upon it, right, if we don't do anything, but we merely experience it and recognize it as an experience passing through us, gives us the space, right, allows us to really figure out why, where am I feeling that, where is this thought coming from, and the thought itself is triggering some emotional response within me. The event is neutral, and they've talked about this before, like the storyline itself is neutral. Facts are neutral. They have no emotional attachment. We attach the emotion to the event that is occurring. In other words, if there's let's say a big bomb goes off somewhere and that happens, right? Our response to that, right, is our own individual response. The event itself is just an event. It's neutral. It has no feeling. It's not, when it goes off, it doesn't feel, oh, I went off. No, it just goes off. That's its nature. And then we attach our feeling to the nature of that particular event. And this happens when we're communicating with individuals. So when we communicate with individuals and they start to, what we feel like, attack us, or they start to, whatever it is, or even us, maybe we start attacking people based on what we think is right, rather than being open to the communication. So I highly recommend that you look into this on dialogue. I know that Boehm didn't, I mean, he wasn't wanting it to be out to the public, but it is. And really diving deep into it, not making it something that's just this woo-woo thing or dumbing it down or whatever, but really allowing yourself to engage in the process of what that might mean for you. Really diving deep. We need that deep dive right now. That's what's important. Diving deep into the subconscious mind, diving deep into our hearts, and really, really, really pulling out what's available there. For the benefit of who? The benefit of you. It's for your benefit. Or not. Don't do it, right? It's a neutral event. Again, that's why I say everything I say, you either do it, you don't. Doesn't, I mean, it's totally up to you, right? You're the one who gets to decide how you want to maneuver through your life, how you want to engage it, how you want to move the needle forward, right? Good morning, Dollar Rich. No. Dollar Rich Neil? I don't know if you're still on here, but good morning. And anybody who's on Facebook, please say good morning. So that I can say good morning to you. So on dialogue, again, it's about communication. And when we have effective communication, we start to co-create with individuals. Also, there's a level of respect, right? A level of respect for people. Like, it's so when people have a dialogue or they're able to communicate, there's sort of this trust and bond that's created. And then from there, right, their opportunities start to arise. Opportunities start to show up. again, that's where opportunities exist, right? When we start to communicate and connect with the individuals who are willing and open to go create and listen. So again, it's almost like people don't care what you know until they know that you care. I said this the other day. And also, people remember how you make them feel. That's what they remember. They don't remember what you bought them. They don't remember the gifts you get them. And gifts are nice, and it's nice to do that. It's a nice gesture. But at the end of the day, if you give them a gift and you make them feel shitty, they're not really, it's not going to matter. But if you make them feel good and give them no gift, it's going to matter. So remember how people make you feel. That's where it lies. And how do we do this? Again, open up. So on dialogue, and there's more to it. I'm going to be reading the book myself to see what does it have to offer in terms of practicality. How do we use this stuff practically in our life, right? That's what's important. If it's not something that can be applied to the real world, then why, to me, I always say, then why does it matter? Because you can look at science, and science, well, you could apply it to the real world. Okay, but how does that apply to my personal life and what I'm up to and what I want to create? And so I've done a ton of reading, and I've applied different processes to my life to see what works, and I know what works for me. I have a process that works for me. The process being a process that was shared, good morning, classroom, when I was doing my leadership trainings um, and and coaching. And really what it was is declarations, intentions, and milestones. And that's a process that a good friend of mine taught me. And sticking to that particular process, right, has allowed me to create what I choose in my life. It doesn't come from a space of woo-woo, like let me, vision boards are really good. But the thing is that they're so focused on the material outcome. And it's kind of funny because I was talking to my friend the other day, and she's like, I got a plan. She goes, and I'm just going to stop planning. You know why? Because I planned my whole life, and I tried to control my whole life, and I looked back at my plan, and guess what? None of it came out the way I planned it. She was like, "Did I really do what I said I was what I planned to do?" So it's not that planning's not good, right? We need some order and we need some structure in our life too to help us move forward. But it doesn't necessarily mean that there can't be flexibility in the way that it shows up. Like if we're so attached to it, it has to be this person or it has to be that person. If we get attached to that, right, then we miss the mark sometimes because maybe there was a better way to do it and someone showed up, but we couldn't even see. We're so blinded to our own control over how we want things to go that we just totally miss an opportunity that would have made our life even easier, perhaps, with what we're trying to attain. And we just miss it completely. Good morning, Evan. Good morning, Detroit Blue. So, very important things, right? So on dialogue for one, and for two, how do we create the practicality of these ideas into the world so that we are moving ourselves forward, moving our goals forward, and creating what we choose to create. Again, things change constantly, right? That's a for sure thing. It's change always happens. And the thing with humans, right, is that we get so attached. That's what I was talking about earlier about the attachment to thoughts, that we will get so attached to something that we won't, again, we'll miss the mark. We'll miss the boat. We're like, oh, wow, where did it go? Oops. It's like hem and ha, like Who Moved My Cheese. I don't know if anybody's read that. If you guys have, let me know. Who on here's read Who Moved My Cheese? It's like a kid's book. It's an easy read. And it's, you can read it in one setting, of course, but it's about these two mice, and it's about these people, and they have cheese, and they're in a place where there's a bunch of cheese, and then the cheese runs out, but the people are stuck trying to get more cheese in the same place, and the mice realize that they have to move, that you have to change sometimes, that if you don't change, you're not, it's the same thing. It's almost like the insanity, right, of like doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. Like you're going to the same place over and over again, and it's not working. It's not showing up. It's, well, why? Because you're doing it the same way. You're attached. And so the same can be said for your attachment to thought. I'm so attached to this thought that I can't even learn something new. I'm so attached to the way that I think that I can't even open my ideas and my heart and my mind to other people's opinions and ideas because I'm right. That's what that says. But the reality is, are you right? Is there right? Or can we start to understand and listen to each other? And open up the dialogue and then recognize the triggers that happen within us on certain topics, on certain things. I do that as well because there'll be times someone will say something and I'm like, I don't know. It like bothers me. And I'm like, oh, why is that bothering me? What's there? Well, let's be honest with yourself, Natalie. Why did that trigger you? For what purpose? Was it a judgment? And I've talked about the mirrors, right? Good morning, Sophia. They've talked about the mirrors, and there's like 3 mirrors that you can go through, and people rarely even get to through the first one, and sometimes never through the second one. It's because the process it's hard. I mean, it's easier to talk about the process than to apply it to your life, right? Becomes the challenge to really, really, really be cognizant and intentional about the practice of this particular thing. So the practice being, one, if you're looking at somebody in judgment, then it's like because it lives within you. Like you spot it, you got it kind of thing. Oh, well, he's just being a jerk, but you understand that you're being a jerk. So it's kind of like this. It's the best way to describe the first mirror is like in traffic. You're driving and someone cuts you off and you ask a-hole and then you beep and you flip them off. Well, now you're being an a-hole. So now it's both. So who's really the a-hole? Well, both of you guys are, right? Okay, so that's mirror number 1. Number 2 is judgment. So you could say, well, I'm not being a jerk. I'm totally nice. That guy cut me off and I didn't yell at him. I love him, but he's a jerk. That was a jerk move. Okay, that's judgment. That's saying I'm right about the way I drive and he's wrong about the way he drives. And now I'm judging him because he needs to go get driving lessons. Okay. And the third one is, and so most people don't get through the judgment one because that's a hard one, right? The judgment, like we judge all the time. It's part of our, we do it without even knowing it. It's probably so fast we don't even realize we're doing it. And so the last one then is a very, very, very intentional way of, and I think would help in perhaps understanding on dialogue, and what Bohm was saying once I read the book. I'm kind of making assumptions. That's one thing he said not to do, but it's okay. Um, we all do it. Is the last mirror is that we recognize that it's not neither right, wrong, good, or bad, but that it comes from a deep trauma or something that created the judgment that we have. So it's peeling back the layers. And when we go to that deeper space, right, there's more that's available to us in that place because now we can take personal responsibility for what is showing up. So perhaps, right, you learned from your father who taught you how to drive that when people cut you off that they're jerks. Or maybe you have an experience where someone cut off your family or an accident happened because of a driver, and so now anybody who does that is, so there's an emotional attachment and a thought to that, and that's the third mirror. But we often don't get to that mirror. We often think that everything is circumstantial and based on what's happening outside of us rather than what's happening internally and our experience with what we're viewing as our external world. So we can say, oh, let me look at this person who just cut me off. Okay, I'm triggered. Why am I triggered? What's going on there? You could give it space, and I know that there's that part of on dialogue where it says just to allow the space, kind of space to exist, kind of let it just linger there for a while without doing anything about it, and just let it kind of happen. And what's available, and then say, oh, well, I'm upset at this person because this happened, and then you start remembering the person you love that maybe something happened to them because someone cut them off, or whatever it is. Good morning, patience. And then after that, right, after you go through that stage, you can then start to say, okay, now I can shift my mindset around this, or I can feel it as it arises within me. And it doesn't have to trigger you. But it still can if you want to. But that is something that you can use as a process to sort of understand. And when you're talking to people, so if you were, let's say, trying to rectify a relationship or trying to have a conversation, being able to listen and recognize the triggers and responses that show up for you without acting upon them, that is not easy, right? To sit and listen without, because right away we want to respond. We want to respond. We want to respond. We want to get our 2 cents in, right? We want to say what we have to say. Rather than doing that, just observing it. Become the witness, the observer. Not easy, though. It's not. And trust me, I've practiced and practiced, and there was a time I was an observer and a witness for like hours, and it was crazy when I got there, but was I able to stay there? No. Was I able to maintain it? No. As I've been able to get back to it as often? No. Because it's a practice and it takes time, you know? And sometimes it takes longer to process those feelings that surface or arise within you because you're like, whoa, what's going on here? Like I was talking about yesterday when they denied me food and someone called me stupid. And so for those things, I'm going like, okay, how do I, I can respond it. But then it's like, well, what's coming up within me? Am I upset about this? What are the thoughts and the emotions around stupid? And so it's like, oh, okay. And then how do I come to a place where I can just let it go? Let it rise up, but then let it go through me, move through me. Ooh, sorry. Bless me. Ooh, a little sneezy. Like a little pepper up in my nose. Maybe some cayenne pepper up there. Just kidding. Little sneezy wheezy. Hey, Sir David. So again, on dialogue, Bohem, and he was a physicist, a quantum physicist. He was, and I love that the fact that these quantum physicists really recognize that the world that we see around us is just crazy, and really there's no fragmentation between it, and that everything's interconnected, and that we don't understand reality. We just don't understand reality. We're trying to make sense of reality. We try to put our thoughts behind it. We're trying to create something. Our reality becomes what we start to think our reality is, and then we start to create what we think our reality is. And I think Boehm does say this, and on with this, he says, we create the problem. That then we go and we say, well, now we need to fix the problem. And really, that's what he says. As we attach ourselves, or as the thoughts arise, is that we're creating these problems in the world. We're the ones creating them, and now we're saying we need to fix it. But we're the ones creating it. Why? Because we're thinking. We have this thought process. Our brain, it functions differently than anything else in the animal kingdom on this planet. And because of that, we get attached to thoughts. We get attached to them. We fragmentate. We ostracize. We isolate. We make wrong and right. We, based on the thought process we have, if we merely just existed without being attached to thoughts, we wouldn't be afraid of death. We may not even know of death. We may just allow ourselves to just, go with the flow of life, be out in nature. But we've had these ideas, these concepts, and we've created things. And the creations that we made have created problems, and those problems now we're seeking to solve. So we created the problems that we're seeking to solve. And it becomes full circle. Now we're looking at it and saying, what do we do? Well, we just got attached to thought, really. So allow yourself to be in that. So today it's kind of allow yourself to be in that space of just really being the observer of the thought. Not necessarily trying to attach yourself to it, but asking yourself what emotional states of being arise within you as you're thinking about certain things that come up. So certain things will come up. Oh, well, what am I thinking about that? What does that make me feel internally? The feeling part is missing in humanity, and that's why we're so disconnected. It's the feeling, the emotion that comes from it. We act as though we have no emotion. Well, yeah, we do. There's some kind of emotional response there. And it's the emotions, right, that are driving some sort of action and behavior. So there you have it. Okay. So on dialogue, I'll be reading Healing Through Dark Emotions. I go back and forth all the time. Who knows with Natalie? I woke up this morning feeling kind of tired and a little bit later today on my podcast. But, just keep working at it. You guys are doing amazing. I love you guys so much. And again, hopefully this is supportive for you guys. That's all I can wish and hope for, is that what I do supports you. It definitely supports me, and I love having you guys. So thank you so much. I love you guys. Have the most magnificent Wednesday. I believe it's Wednesday. I've been known to say wrong days all the time, but I think today's Wednesday. So have a really fantastic Wednesday, or have a wellness, wonky, wacky Wednesday. And then I will be seeing you guys tomorrow. Okay, love you.